Well, good afternoon and welcome to Engaging Privilege, talking about tokenism. Today, we're fortunate to have a couple of really amazing guests to serve on our panel discussion for today's talk. So first, I'd like to welcome our panelists, and I'm going to give you a short bio of each one of them. First, we have Irving Joyner, who's a professor at North Carolina Central University. He's a graduate of Long Island University and received his JD from Rutgers University in New Jersey. He regularly teaches courses in criminal law, criminal procedure, civil rights, and race in the law. He's written 3 editions of his book, Criminal Procedure in North Carolina, and has published numerous articles and manuscripts for continuing legal education programs. Professor Joyner provides legal counsel for several political, religious, and community organizations and to needy individuals in civil rights and criminal appeal cases. In 2006, he was honored by NCCU's law school students as Professor of the Year. Over the years, he has received numerous honors and awards for his work as professor. He's appeared on a couple of TV newscasts as well, and he's a civil rights and criminal law litigator and community and political activist. So we're grateful to have him join us today. And then we have Alice Scarpinato. Did I get your name right? She is the
absolutely right. You speak Italian.
She's the Vice President of Marsh's Talent, Learning, and Inclusion team. So in this role, she is responsible for developing and executing all aspects of the graduate and early career programs within the United States, including technical training, professional development, experiential learning, career pathing, mentorship, and diversity initiatives. In addition, Alice partners with the Marsh's global talent and HR leaders to design and deliver graduate training programs across Latin America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and the Middle East. Ultimately, Alice's goal is to equip, engage, motivate, and inspire early colleagues to grow as professionals and as individuals. Alice earned her BA from Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, and her MFA from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She proudly supports the arts in the Armed Forces, Penn Ryan Veterinarian Hospital, and is a member of the Corporate Leadership Committee for Rosie Theater Kids. And then we have Lindsay Spann. She is the Employee Engagement Specialist at IAT Insurance Group. And in this role, she manages the organization's inclusion and diversity efforts, employee engagement initiatives, and outreach for yearly training program. Before joining IAT in September of 2019, Lindsay worked for Cypress Creek Renewables in Durham, where she served as an HR generalist. Prior to that, she was the Employee Relations Coordinator for a law firm headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. Lindsay holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Communication Studies from James Madison University and a Master of Human Resource Management from the University of Richmond. She is also the 2020 National African American Insurance Association Talent Competition Company Liaison. So we have some great students in our RMI program who are having the pleasure of working with her every week as they prepare for their case study. So please join me in welcoming our guest. And we get the virtual claps today. So in today's discussion, we're going to focus on the concepts of tokenization and its relation to privilege. We're going to hear from our panelists on the lessons that they've learned as they've navigated tokenism in the workplace. If you have a question, if you could hold it to the end, that would be great. And at the end of our 45-minute panel conversation, I'll invite participants to either put their questions in the chat where you can address everyone, or you could just send one to me directly, or to type an X in the chat box if you'd like to ask a question. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So the words tokenism and representation often get used hand in hand. What are some similarities and differences between tokenism and representation? And for this question, we're going to start with Lindsay. And if anyone wants to join in after Lindsay, you're welcome to.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jamie, for that warm welcome. I'm super excited to be a part of the discussion today. And so I think for me, the first thing that I thought of with this question is, either tokenism or representation that can kind of fall into being the first, being the only, or being different. And so I think both kind of shed light on a specific characteristic that you have. That could be demographic, that could be sexual orientation, it could be race or religion. And really the difference, I would say, is tokenism is diversity without being inclusive. It's diversity for diversity's sake, in that you are there solely as a figurehead, let's say, for a specific characteristic or demographic quality that you have. Where representation comes into play is where you have a seat at the table, where you are there and your values and your perspective and your voice is valued. And so tokenism really has zero activity or action behind it, whereas representation, there is action, there is positive intent, behind having that individual as a part of the organization or as a part of the conversation.
Excellent, thank you. Would anyone else like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I agree with Lindsay. I think it is when you were saying, the first, the only, and whatnot. I think that tokenism and representation are certainly tied together in any organization's journey towards inclusion. So again, Lindsay, 100% on board with that. In both cases, in both tokenism and in representation, you are essentially tapping your talent, your diverse talent, to act as the spokesperson for your firm or to participate in, initiatives and activities. The difference for me, though, is that tokenism is when you have to tap the same person or the same talent every time. And that can be dangerous in the sense that you are relying on that same talent. You are walking a very fine line. You're relying on that talent to elevate your brand and achieve your strategies. So while you're certainly providing opportunity and development and visibility, you're asking that person to be a voice and to be a or the representative. And is that what that person wants? Is that person tired of being the spokesperson? Is that person tired of being a teacher? And is that person tapped out? So I think that's one of the dangers of tokenism, because as folks are on their journey to inclusion, when you truly do have representation, an organization will be able to tap any number of different individuals to participate in activities and to represent the firm. You're not continuing to rely on the same talent for that.
Thank you. Professor Joyner?
Well, I would agree with all of those comments. There's really not much to add to that. The notion, I think, is that people want to be valued within the space that they find themselves in, and being able to make a positive contribution to the goals of the organization for which they are associated. And so I think that the explanation that that's been provided would certainly fit into anything that I would say about that.
Excellent, thank you. Well, this next question, I'm going to start with you, Professor Joyner. We've seen a growing number of lawsuits filed against board of directors for not having enough diversity on their board. We've also seen some companies attempt to implement diversity mandates, which essentially results in quotas. How should companies be working to diversify their boards?
Well, I think the first part of it is having a genuine desire to diversify, and diversify for legitimate reasons, management reasons, that it is not a sham, I should say, that it is not done just for the picture optics that might occur, but that they are looking to expand the knowledge base to fit in with the population that they seek to reach and that they seek to serve. So I think that's the first part of it. The second part of it is actively going out to find that talent because it is there. And too often people are restricted in the search and where it is that they go to find these individuals and what type people that they are looking for to find to work in that space. So I think that those are two very important pieces. Then I think you also want to talk about who's making the approach? Is it someone who has a genuine interest in finding quality representatives that can add to the knowledge base that's there? Or is it someone that's really not gung-ho about the goals of diversity and inclusion within that space? So I think those three things are kind of foundations that you can build upon. The last thing I want to say is that, oftentimes we look for people in all the wrong places. And one of the places that people fail to look to is HBCUs and HBCU graduates who have a wealth of knowledge and background and experience. And there is a phobia about reaching out to those campuses and to those alumni basis for individual because of the perception of the lack of quality that you might find from there. So I'll stop there and let the other panelists chime in on that.
Thank you.
I was just going to defer to Professor Joyner on anything that had to do with lawsuits. But no, I think it's absolutely right. As far as, I think it goes without saying that many organizations are pretty late to the party when it comes to having real diversity on their boards. And whether they are doing it because of the laws that are, have been enacted. So the, 2018 California Women on Boards law, whether it is the lawsuits that are being filed with, regarding the lack of diversity on a board. However we are getting folks to the point where they are able to take meaningful and substantive action, I think then it is about finding that person who's going to contribute their experience and their background in a meaningful way to the organization or the industry, for the board that they're joining.
Yes, and I agree with Professor Joyner and with Alice as well. I think it's about looking internally first to see where the gaps are, on your board in terms of experience or expertise or training, and then really making the decision based on what the business needs, or else you'll kind of teeter on that line of tokenism, right? And hiring someone solely because they're a diverse candidate and not really because they'll be able to make an impact within the organization.
Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting organization. It's called 2020 Women on Boards. And the organization was working to kind of accelerate the gender balance on corporate boards of directors, ultimately with the goal being that, for the organizations that they were looking at, 20% of a board should be female by 2020. And even from 2018 to 2019, they increased. So I think they had indicated that women gained 800-ish seats on boards, whereas, and then men lost 358. So the way that they did that was by adding seats to their board, specifically with the purpose of, after Lindsay, to your point, identifying where there are gaps, so that some folks moved in the direction of adding seats to their board to include more diversity on their board.
Interesting. So as we look broader than just the board itself, what are some steps that companies and individuals that you're seeing can take to make sure their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives avoid tokenism? And I'm going to start with you, Alice, on that one.
Sure. I think that in recent years, and perhaps in particular in this year, I think organizations are really pivoting and are doubling down on their commitments to diversity and inclusion. And that's terrific. However, many organizations have waited too long. And so tokenism is their current reality. I think that it will take time to determine if tokenism turns into meaningful change. Because meaningful change will come about as a result of consistency and accountability. If a business isn't consistent, if an organization does not hold themselves accountable and they don't follow through, then they really have only achieved tokenism and they will go no further in their journey. There's no silver bullet for addressing diversity and equity and inclusion. There is no single approach or solution that's going to be right for everyone. So perhaps for organizations that are just starting that journey, they may, with the best of intentions, utilize tokenism or be forced to utilize tokenism as they work to achieve representation. And I think that, I think time will tell if we've gotten there. I think that it is, it's playing the long game, and it's staying on top of it and staying accountable. And it is not, you know, completing a project or an initiative and checking a box. This has to get into the blood of the organization, and then you've got to pump that blood through.
And speaking of that, you know, Alice is part of Marsh, and Marsh has done some phenomenal work with 2 insurance trade associations that are identity specific, National African American Insurance Association, and then the Latin American Association of Insurance Agents. And they did a comprehensive study looking across the insurance industry, asking questions related to how companies are currently treating their employees and how people are getting into the industry and how they can do better. And so I think, you know, really having quality assessments at the beginning of that type of work is important to avoid some of the assumptions that we have. And one of the pieces that came out to Professor Joyner's earlier point was just the need to be more intentional with recruiting and supporting historically Black colleges and universities because there is a strong talent pool at those schools as well.
Well, let me just kind of just throw in. I was watching the Laker Heat game last night, and it dawned on me that there's only one LeBron James, and that in many instances when people search, they search for the LeBron James. And once that individual is identified, then they use him or her up. Everybody wants to use them because they are deemed to be the lodestar. And the pool is much broader than that, because anybody can shoot a 3-pointer. So there is a huge pool that's out there that's being missed because we oftentimes find that there is a quest to get the gold star. And in doing that, we miss a lot of opportunities to find real diamonds in the rough that can add value to the organization. So I always seek to encourage that we broaden the search and bring in and look at non-traditional people. And I think, you know, the organizational piece that you just identified with African Americans, Latinos, and women, organizations that have outreach and ability to identify other people that might be in this pool is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes it's about changing the question. When you are recruiting and sourcing, perhaps the question is no longer, has this person done this job? It's, can this person do this job? And we as an organization, we as managers, we as learning and development professionals need to take some ownership and accountability for ensuring that the talent we bring into this organization can get there. We'll get them there. They don't have to have done it before, because let's be honest, this isn't exactly the most well-known industry. I think there are probably more misconceptions about it than there are things that are going around that are true. And so just swapping talent like for like across the industry isn't truly going to get us to a culture of inclusion. It is not going to bring diversity to this industry. So maybe we rephrase the question. Maybe we start asking, can this person, and can we help get this person there? And then we have to deliver for our people.
Well, let me also just add, and I apologize for doing that, but can you keep the person? Mm-hmm. Once you bring them in, can you keep them? Mm-hmm. Are you providing that person with an enriching environment so that that individual can grow, because with that growth comes added value for the organization. So a lot of times they bring in someone, but they don't service that individual or allow that individual to really get into the meat of the organizational structure such that they have a vested interest in the growth and development of that entity.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with both of your points. I think access is a huge part of a candidate's success within an organization. Do they have access to the resources that they need, to the training that they need, to the people that they need to work with and network with and get to know, and the ability to build those relationships. And I think too, before even going down the road of hiring, organizations need to look internally to see what their structures are in place before bringing someone in. It's almost a little too late once you get them there, and then it's okay, how do we support them now? But you really should be thinking about that before you even start the hiring process.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all really good points, and really leads nicely into that next question that I have is, when we're looking at current business approaches to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I often hear from recruiters that they're looking for diverse talent, and even those who that aren't from underrepresented talent, from underrepresented backgrounds, they're looking for them to have the competencies to engage in a diverse and inclusive workplace. How much support do you see being given towards creating meaningful change as an institution or as a business in those areas?
So I know, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll follow you.
I was going to say, I know that within our organization, there is a significant push, I would say, or actually putting a name to something that I think everyone had always thought of doing and knew that they should do over the last 2 years, which is what we refer to as growing our own. And it's not only, bringing in more diverse talent to the organization, bringing in the new hires at the early career or the junior level, but it is creating a meaningful and substantive experience for them when it comes to onboarding, training, development, career pathing. And again, to Professor Joyner's point, what is the next step? Making sure that we coordinate to the best of our abilities that time. When the talent is ready, is that job available? So really trying to create that career path so that we can retain this talent that we have found and we have secured and we have trained. And the idea of not only bringing them in, training and development, but then looking to internal promotion first. First, let's look at the talent. And again, we ask ourselves the same question, not has this person done the job, can they? But they are known to us. We have trained them, we have developed them. So if somebody's 60% ready, 70% ready, can we get them that extra 30% in role? So I think that it is a real significant increase in the retention of our colleagues, in the retention of our diverse colleagues within the organization, because it is essentially a commitment to our talent, that you have found a home here, and we would like to give you every opportunity to make sure you want to stay.
Well, I would just add to that, mentorship, the need to have legitimate mentors that's there, that's able to provide the kinds of assistance and incentives for people to want to learn. And because I think, along the way, there is movement from organization to organization. You expect that to happen. But you still have to be able to provide the kind of leadership and also to utilize that person to reach back and find others that they can bring in for whom they can be mentors. So that is, I think, helpful in maximizing the inclusion and diversity that's there.
Absolutely. I think everyone needs Everyone needs a mentor. Everyone needs several mentors. And I think everybody needs a sponsor. And for me, the distinction being the sponsor is that person who will talk about you when you're not in the room. Mentor might not have that opportunity. They could be in a different business line. They could be in a different organization and whatnot. But having that sponsorship, someone who knows you, who knows your abilities, knows your skills, knows your wants, your needs, the things that you're not that good at, and will actively, for all intents and purposes, put their stamp on you, and they will help get you to the next step. And I think it's tough, because finding that sponsor who has the ability and the knowledge to help get somebody there, it's hard to find it, but it is priceless. And it can accelerate somebody's career and accelerate somebody's opportunity exponentially.
What do you think about the scenarios where maybe a business went into an idea meaning to make meaningful change, but ended up executing the idea in a way that played out wrong, or played out in like tokenization or some other, I guess, negatively perceived way? Can you think of an example?
Okay, are you looking for a specific organizational thrust that went bad, or hypothetically?
Either.
Bad?
You can give it a real life example and a hypothetical too.
Oh yeah, I think when you find that that you're going down the wrong path and that you've made a mistake, you got to cut your losses. A mistake should not become fatal. It should be a learning opportunity for all of the people that's involved. And in the effort to increase talent, period, you make mistakes. You find people who are ill-suited. You find people who are out of place, or you find people who will become out of place through the passage of time. And with those individuals, once you find that, you have to be able to cut your loss, but you can't give up on the overall goal. And saying, well, we had one, but that didn't work out. But you have to, just like with any other employee, then go back out to the marketplace, and with the same goals and intentions in mind, and then pursue that in a honest manner with at least knowledge of how to cure the past mistakes that you made.
Organizations too have to have a level of humility and transparency with any of the efforts that they're trying to put into place. Because with that builds trust, right? I don't think employees ever think that everything's going to go perfectly smooth the first time, especially with such a topic that, it evokes a lot of passion in people. And I think it means a lot when you are putting yourself out there to try to create this meaningful change that Alice spoke on earlier. So if there is a level of humility, of transparency, and being able to say, we didn't get it right this time, but that's not going to stop us from trying to Professor Joyner's point. So just being open and honest with your employees goes a long way, even if you do make a mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that kind of self-awareness, I've been really, a lot of the conversations that we have. So when we've hosted events, so hypothetically, we hosted an event last year with an HBCU, and we were looking, to put together panels and discussions and presentations and all of the razzle dazzle that comes with an office visit. And when you have 50 wide-eyed students who have no idea what insurance broking and risk management is. And so, as we're looking at folks to have on the panels, as we're looking at folks who are going to present, I mean, obviously when you're dealing with any kind of campus, you always want to have the alums in there. You're just like, oh, look, alums, that's the low hanging fruit. That's a quick win. Grab an alum. Because who doesn't love to go and speak to the, students from their alma mater? I mean, they love it. The students love, oh, wow. there's people from my school who go here kind of thing. But as we were looking to kind of build our panels, I was working with one of the senior leaders in our organization. She's an African-American woman, and we were planning this schedule for an HBCU. And we were looking at panelists to have on there, and we were kind of not gonna lie, we were trying to pick some of the really exciting areas of our business. I mean, not just your standard property and casualty. We had political risk, we had terrorism, we were going for it. And I think it was one of those things where, as we were trying to, put all the pieces together to make this interesting, to make this applicable, to make this exciting, to make this relatable, we got to the point where we were trying to decide between, should we have this person or this person? And we kind of looked at each other, and we truly did look at each other, and we said, well, obviously we would love to have another African-American on the panel to speak to the HBCU, but is that really representative of who we are? Because we were looking at potentially having a panel of 8 African-American senior leaders, and is that actually representative of who we are as an organization? And we thought, you know what? It might not be where we are right there. So we said, let's be open and honest with who we are. And who we're not, but we are aspiring to be. And so I think that kind of self-awareness and to Lindsay's point, the transparency, because, especially working with students, there's a meter on there that I think students in early career, they can see through. I mean, we more experienced professionals may think that we're pulling the wool over. Oh no, this is great. This is what it is. But that authenticity meter is really on point with students and early career professionals. And they know when you are not being authentic within minutes. And so I think when you are talking about anything that pertains to diversity and inclusion, tokenism and representation, you've got to say it as it is. Because as soon as you have demonstrated a lack of authenticity, a lack of self-awareness, then I think you do lose the trust of your colleagues, you lose the trust of the relationships.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point to think about, when you're trying to be representative, that how sometimes it can almost be over-representative and not accurate. Anyone else want to chime in on that part? One thing I want to get at is, the topic really stems around, using privilege, or how you can engage privilege and how it intersects with tokenism. What role do you think you see privilege playing in navigating either tokenism or the lessons that you're able to learn in navigating tokenism, and maybe some of the efforts that you find that work and don't work? What role does privilege play in that story?
Well, if I may, privilege normally wins out. That's at the top of the stairs, and privilege doesn't necessarily equate to qualifications, the credentials that you need. So when I look at privilege, I see the lack of diversity and inclusion, because you're playing to the same old market and you're working from the same old base of the pool that you're dealing with. So that is something that I shy away from. I'm looking for new places to go, new markets that's out there, and where there has been the ability proven to present quality products and look at that and grow it from that point, and understand that that is what you're doing, is growing it, rather than just rewarding a person who is in a privileged platform or in a privileged space and connection.
Yeah.
Want to note too, training for those that are in hiring positions, or really for your entire organization. What is privilege? What is an unconscious bias? and being sure that those that are in those places to mentor, to hire, understand exactly what that is so that they can be aware of it. To Alice's point about self-awareness, there are things about us that we may not realize that we're doing. It's what we've always done. It feels comfortable to us. And a lot of these conversations and really the effort that we have to put in to move forward, it can be uncomfortable for a good majority of people. And so it really starts with providing, I think, the resources internally, and training is one that comes to mind. And that's not the only area that or organizations aren't solely responsible for that. I think as individuals too, we have to put in the time and the effort on our own outside of the four walls of our work organization.
If you have experience being tokenized, how did that make you feel? What did you do? And what advice would you have for students who are in that shared identity or who maybe are not, and find themselves, even seeing a display of tokenization? What advice do you have for, I guess, both sides of that experience? We'll start with Alice on that one.
So I think that at least how I would coach some of my early career colleagues and whatnot is that sometimes if you are in the position where you are the talent that continues to be tapped, if you come across the point where you feel that tokenism is in play, to some extent, it can put you in the driver's seat. The business is asking you for something. They need you for something. They want you for something. Now, how can we leverage that both to develop you as an individual, to develop you as a professional? You can always say no. But what if you said yes? How can we maximize this opportunity for somebody, whether it is for their own professional or personal development, or whether it is for colleagues to be that teacher, to provide that information, to challenge the norm or the status quo, or to challenge the privilege that is being demonstrated. So, and if somebody wants to opt out and say, you know what, no, thank you, not looking for it. But sometimes there is visibility and opportunity, and it is a choice to use it or to not. Just depends on situation, circumstance, and the talent and the opportunity that's arisen. I think that I guess in my experience of tokenism, it's been a little call it secret tokenism. Because I think that the things that would make me different or diverse by definitions are not necessarily visible. And so folks may not have realized that there was a token in the room. And it's interesting to see in personal, professional life, what is said or not said when they don't realize there's a token in the room.
Well, I've never been in a situation where I was the token. I've talked with people who have felt that they were the token. And my advice to them in terms of their growth and development, because that is one side of the equation, is what is it that the person is looking for, and what is it that that person can get out of the environment that they're in to prepare them for the next step. It's a different look when you're on the other side and you're looking at someone who is a token and how you deal with that person. But if you find yourself in that role, I think you have to make a decision of whether you want to continue to be pimped or whether you want to become an opportunist and use the resources that are there to better equip yourself for the next step. And that's assuming that you can identify what the next step is. That you're then able to look at, well, what are the resources here that can maximize my growth and development so that I'm presenting a better package for the next person that's interested in me or that I seek to develop an interest for me. And so I think that that's, and again, I look at sports as an example of how that works. Some excellent ball players aren't able to catch on with a team because their specific skills aren't needed at that point within that organizational structure. And so at that point, what they want to do is to make a record for themselves so that they can then present themselves to other teams that will need those skills. But at the time, you have to hone those skills. You have to tighten those skills up. You have to develop those skills as well as expand your skill base so that you offer more to the next party than you are presenting right there. So it's a matter of being able to utilize or take that as an opportunity for your own growth and development in that situation.
Yeah, thank you. Lindsay, you want to chime in?
Sure. I think speaking just from my own personal experience and being an African American woman that is in the D&I space, sometimes it can feel like I am being called on, but I also realize that that's my job and that's the career and profession that I've chosen. And so in that regard, I don't feel that it's tokenism. However, I think my advice would be, we can't necessarily control how the opportunity was presented to us or why the opportunity is presented to us, but we can control what we do with it. I think to Alice and Professor Joyner's point, and my goal in whatever opportunity I'm presented, whether it's a job or it's something outside of that, is to leave it better than I found it. And so if I go into any situation with that mindset, I can kind of put aside, okay, maybe the reason for approaching me is because I'm an African American woman, but what can I do to make this situation better for whomever may come after me, or for the betterment of the organization or for whatever, the opportunity is. So I think sometimes, even if you are put in that space of potentially it being based on, tokenism, is taking a positive outlook and how you can leave a place better than you found it. And they're calling on you, to Alice's point earlier, for a reason. And so take the opportunity, use your voice in the best way that you can, have the impact that you can, have the influence that you can, and use it for the betterment of not just yourself, but for others.
So now we're towards the end of this discussion, and I'd like to invite the participants to either put their questions in the chat, which you can address to either everyone or just directly to myself, or type an X in the chat indicating you'd like to ask a question, and I'll go ahead and call on you. I'll give you a few moments to do that. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, but as students are probably maybe typing. I do have one more question.
Just that good.
Yeah, it was that good. I do have one more question. Just thinking from a professor's perspective, and I know we have some people from our business career services center on the line. What can we do to better prepare students to enter into the workforce that is becoming more diversity and inclusion centered? What advice do you have for us as we prepare students?
I would encourage students when they're interviewing for jobs to ask the questions, what are your DE&I efforts? What are your 5-year plans for diversifying your workforce? And ask those pointed questions. I think organizations now need to be prepared to answer those types of questions in interviews because people are taking note. They're taking note of companies that spoke out earlier this year and those that didn't, that made a statement or putting effort towards diversity within their workplace. And so organizations need to be prepared to answer those questions, but I think candidates also need to feel encouraged to ask them.
Thank you.
And I would say that I think students need to be prepared to act and to be a part of the D&I initiatives within the organization. Whether they view themselves as diverse or not, we are introducing, or we have introduced a series of, trainings, activities surrounding allyship, which traditionally ally had been used, primarily, with LGBTQ. But we're talking about allyship in general, which perhaps is kind of tapping into everybody recognizing the privilege that they have. Now, how can we all work together to make an organization or to make our world more diverse or more inclusive and equitable? So I think, coming to an organization with an openness, a willingness, dare I say, an eagerness to participate alongside the organization, I think is really meaningful and would strike a chord.
Well, I think from the perspective of the applicant or the student who is coming up and seeking to make this connection, you have to be prepared. You have to prepare yourself. And a part of that is some honest self-evaluation of what are your skills and what are the your knowledge base that you have, and then how can I expand those skills and that knowledge base so that I look like I'm a diamond in the rough, so that I can present a picture to a person that this is an asset that I need to have in my stable so that I can grow. So you can't be narrow and stuck in your own trenches. You have to broaden yourself. You have to go out and take on learning experience that you've not had before and that may even make you uncomfortable. But you have to be comfortable in who you are, because no matter what you do, you are always going to be what you are. You can't shed that. So if you are a minority, you are a minority, and people are not going to overlook that or not see that. But you want to be able to celebrate that in a positive mode to indicate just how that self can be of importance to the person that is seeking your service. So I guess the notion is to be the better you that you can be, and seek to grow and develop yourself along the way, but don't minimize who you are and what you are, but knowing full well that there is always room for further development, and you have to seek how to better develop yourself.
And I think that's great concluding remarks for today's panel discussion. Oh wait, there is a question. All right. So I'll read it aloud. Ms. Spann stated that representation is when you have a seat at the table. I really like how she stated that. I was wondering if you all had any suggestions on how to better investigate the efforts of companies concerning diversity and inclusion when applying for internships. What is the best way to find out about their efforts? Is it best to search online or to ask questions to the interviewer? And I'm wondering if there is a way you all see companies are doing what they say and making sure it's not for show. Very good question.
Yep. I think yes, I'm going to jump in here on this one. I'm going to be a little scandalous. Absolutely look online. If somebody is, if an organization, in my humble opinion, if an organization is truly committed to and has established a framework and an actionable plan, then they should, and they would want to post it and advertise that. And then look for the content, look for the depth. Does it feel like it's just for show, or are there specific actionable steps listed? And then ask in the interview, does colleague number 4 know what the diversity and inclusion strategy is? Do they know what the steps are that this broader organization has advertised and has committed to on their website? Threw that out there. Has that message gotten its way through the organization to that interviewer who's sitting there is, I guess, my point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
And I think that I would look for ways to make contact with someone that's in the organization that might serve as or might be a mentor, or from, you know, an African American or Latino woman or that's there, and ask them, you know, give me your assessment of what the situation is like and how you're treated there, and how you're accepted within that organizational structure. And then, you know, seek out other people who might have had connections with the organization. If you ask, you get what you find, and then you have to evaluate that to see if that might be a good fit for me. Because now, you know, you can go to a company and you can go down their employees list, and you can, some of them even have pictures next to the folks that are there. Call them, send them an email, and tell them, you know, that I have an interest in it, and I'd like to get your advice. So that's the best way. A good way to do it, not necessarily the best way, but a way to go about learning about that organization.
I really liked Alice's point to ask specific questions, because I see a lot of times I get the question of, tell me about the culture. And I feel like that's a very broad, so I can easily say, oh, our culture is great. It's very transparent. It's very collaborative. And that may not be the information you're trying to get. So be as specific as you can when it comes to those types of questions to really get to the meat of what the information that you're trying to get.
Yes, because the culture question is very, very common with early career professionals and with graduates and whatnot. And it could be that sometimes that question is asked for lack of another question, but it's very, very broad. And so what about our culture are you asking about? And don't be afraid to ask the question. And if somebody starts to squirm, make note of it. So I think that, you know, asking specifically about, I mean, if somebody were to challenge me and say, how have your, you know, colleague resource groups or your business resource groups, you know, contributed to the bottom line, contributed to the diversity of the organization, or increasing inclusion and or allyship, whatever. Talk to me specifically about the things that we have there, and don't, I would encourage folks not to shy away from it. I love a challenging question that demonstrates that a student has an interest, has a passion, and wants something of me, because I think our organization has a lot to offer, and I welcome the opportunity to brag about it. And just get me started. So I think it can be, you know, folks may feel, oh, well, I don't want to ask a really hard question. Ask the hard question. You never know. It could be something that somebody's very excited to answer. I've gotten more diversity and inclusion related questions in an interview that has completely taken the conversation off track. But it has been some of the most exciting and interesting interviews I've ever had. Because just as I think managers and interviewers are trying to find that area that the students are passionate about, where do you start to see that spark? Is it when they're talking about this class or this activity or this sports team, whatever it is? Find that passion point for the folks that you're interviewing with as well. And I think that inclusion and diversity is something that a lot of people are very passionate about.
And once you're there, promote diversity and inclusion. Don't be satisfied with being the only one that's there or one of the few, because you have a responsibility to reach back and help provide the way for others to come after you.
Well, let's thank our panelists one more time for joining us today in our virtual claps. I know some of you will be able to type in the chat. So thank you very much. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you again. It was terrific.
Thank you. And thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
nice week. Have a good one.